everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and today we're reviewing something a little bit different. It's a puzzle tarot game by Post Curious and designer Rita Orlov and Jack Fellows. Now, why is this different for us? We do dabble in the escape room genre.
We love escape rooms.
Yes.
Yes. We like the actual physical escape rooms that you go in and you physically have to make your way out, usually within an hour.
But we've tried a lot that are in the board game space as well, so the escape rooms in a box. And this is kind of like that, but it's not really an escape room because there's no time pressure, but it's definitely an interesting little puzzle in a box, so we'll tell you more about it.
Yes. So in The Light and the Mist, the theme or the story is that your friend Sam has disappeared, and all we have left is her backpack and this strange deck of cards, which happen to be a tarot deck. And so this is what we're going to, these are the two key pieces that we have to try and puzzle together or piece together what happened to Sam and hopefully find her.
And as we go through this review, we're not going to have any spoilers. So we'll talk a little bit about how it works. We won't give anything away that you wouldn't get in the first 30 seconds of working out how this game works. So mechanically, it's quite interesting because it follows the tarot deck structure. So in a tarot deck, there are 22
major arcana cards.
Arcana.
I'm very much into tarot at the moment, so I know a lot about it.
If you follow the channel, you might know that Maggie goes from hobby to hobby, and it just so happens that at the moment, tarot decks are her hobby, and I happened to back this on Kickstarter a long time ago.
Perfect timing.
And it was perfect timing for us to get this off the shelf. But the way it works is that you have the 22 major arcana cards, and they are basically going to give you a little bit of a spiel to do with the puzzle, so they trigger some content, and then they are going to have their own puzzle that involves the minor arcana or other cards in the deck. And there's always a different number of cards, and the puzzles are all very different, and they're loosely based around the theme of each of those major arcana cards.
Yeah, you can kind of connect them to all of those. Well, if you've sort of seen tarot decks or seen, people doing readings and divinations and things like that, you know some of the cards, the death card, and the fool and the magician and all of this sort of stuff. And so all of that obviously is represented, and there's links to elements of the story as you go along.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is you can complete these puzzles in a non-linear way. And so just like in a tarot deck where you might be selecting a card from, so the cards get shuffled and your fate is revealed by a card, that's a similar way to how the system works, in that you don't have to follow it in the order of the major arcana. You can choose a card and pick your fate, and that dictates the puzzle that you're going to get next, and the solution leads to a piece of the story, and ultimately you're trying to piece the entire story together. So unlike usual reviews where we can show you a ton of stuff, we can't in this review, but we'll talk about some of the things that we really liked about this experience. And the first thing is, of course, undeniably, Jack Fellows and the illustration style that is used, the artwork.
The aesthetic is just beautiful.
Absolutely incredible. And the way that the puzzles are integrated with that artwork. And you're using cards multiple times across the puzzles as well. But it's always really clear to you in subtle ways which parts of the card you're meant to be looking at. I really liked that about it.
It's really well integrated. So when you look at the card, it just looks like it's just this beautiful illustration. And it's not until you're kind of bringing together the cards that are needed for a particular puzzle that you're like, okay, so this is what all these cards seem to have in common. I really enjoy that. And it's just beautiful, and it's got that sort of mysterious. You really get that sense of the mist, of mysterious, but also a little bit kind of there's a warmth to the mystery as well. I think because a lot of it's sort of in the memory type realm.
And we'll talk a little bit about the writing because Rita and Jack worked together on the writing, as is our understanding. Rita did the puzzles, of course, as she's known for with Post Curious, and Jack did all of the artwork, but together they came up with the story. And the writing is quite good, a lot better than other board games that we've experienced with narrative. And I feel like it was just just enough as well. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want too much more because, of course, you have to read out. And if you're working together as a group on the puzzles, there's
Yeah.
a little bit to get through in terms of the lead up to the next puzzle.
Yeah, I would agree. It does feel like it's quite balanced, the amount of narrative that you're sort of reading through, and then the amount of time that you spend doing a puzzle. It's not like, oh, we spend all this time reading doing a puzzle, and then we just read 2 lines and then go back to a puzzle, or the other way around, where it's like the puzzle takes 2 seconds, and then you're like 20 minutes reading story after page. So it's a really nice balance.
It is a good balance.
And the story, I sort of felt it was engaging enough. Like you're sort of like you genuinely feel like you're trying to piece together, what happened, So
yeah, it's motivating. It did have me wondering after I finished the last puzzle, that was an interesting tidbit of information.
Yeah.
I wonder what's going to happen next.
And even doing recapping, it's like, okay, so what do we know?
Yeah, what do we
this
know
thing,
already?
We know that thing, and then that seems to be happening, or
Yeah, and there are a couple of like sensitive themes throughout, and so they did include a trigger warning, so please check that. There are some adult themes in there, so just be aware of that before you break it open with family. You might want to read those trigger warnings. But then I also wanted to talk about the fact that as they talked about in the Kickstarter, that this deck is also meant to be used as a tarot card deck independently of the game and the puzzles.
Yeah, so it is a full tarot deck. So you can actually, you can actually use it as a tarot deck. Because it's really, the purpose of this is mainly to serve the puzzles, I would say that it's not optimized for readings or even to play, some people do play trick-taking games, which is the origin of tarot decks, was they were just like a parlor game for trick-taking games. So it would be hard to play it with this, mainly because the look of the major arcana cards and your minor arcana cards is very similar, so it can be quite hard to kind of tell them apart. So that's sort of, again, I love the artwork in it, and a lot of people collect tarot decks just for the artwork and just to kind of go through it.
Including this one.
Just kind of go through it and kind of just almost kind of get lost in those pieces of art and see what they evoke. And you can definitely do that with this. And what I did enjoy is that if you're familiar with the kind of classic tarot, the Rider-Waite-Smith sort of deck, which are all the kind of images that we all sort of are more familiar with, we've seen. Even though this is not following that exact same imagery, there's elements that are kind of calling back to each one of those ones. So if you know that deck well, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I see this element, they've kind of brought it in here, but it's still mixed in with everything else.
And not just visually, but also as part of the puzzle. Yeah. So they'll kind of thematically intertwine what the card is meant to mean.
And often when you resolve it, you're like, oh, of course.
Of course, that makes perfect sense because that's the card. But that's really great that they've done that as well and really focused on, I guess, the background and history of the tarot.
And they even have the little white book, which is like every tarot deck comes with its own little book of essentially what's the meaning of each one of the cards. So if you did want to use it for divinations or for that sort of stuff, you could. Yeah. But it wouldn't be the primary.
It's not the primary purpose
of this particular deck.
So let's talk about the puzzles. So the puzzles, and we have not ever done a puzzle game by Post Curious.
No.
So put that out there.
This is our first.
Now incredibly interested to do more because I just found the puzzles were the perfect balance of challenging enough for Maggie and I. And I'll caveat that with the fact that we play heavy games. Yep. We've done a lot of escape rooms. We've done a lot of escape room boxes and things like that. And so we're not new to the world of puzzles. We're not experts by any means, but we definitely probably, you get used to like the familiar tropes of puzzles that you can work them out. And we found that this was, sometimes the puzzle was immediately obvious and to one of us and not the other person. Sometimes, it required a piece of paper and us to like do some kind of calculations or think through the puzzle by drawing it out. Yeah. Sometimes it was a spatial puzzle. And so there are lots of different types of puzzles.
Sometimes you're just stumped. You're just like,
sometimes we just sat there.
What's going on?
Yeah, but what was interesting is there was a good amount of, like, sometimes I find in other puzzle games, you just don't know how they got to the solution. It's kind of like, oh, okay, well, that was really abstract. Who was ever going to piece that together?
Yeah.
And with this one, I think, the other great thing is you can bring people in and out of these puzzles because it's not linear. You're kind of just working on a puzzle. And for some of the puzzle cards, we brought my sister in.
Yeah.
And she's particularly good at puzzles like this. But, we would spend, I think on one occasion, it was like over half an hour on a single puzzle.
Yeah.
And it was just like trial and error and working things out. And when you crack it, you feel so smart and you feel it's so satisfying and it's really clear when you've cracked it. So I won't talk too much about how that works mechanically, but it's definitely, when you've solved it. It's not ambiguous about have we solved it, have we not? And so I just thought that was really incredible and like very masterful kind of puzzle making.
I love just like the variety of the puzzles as well. And the fact that, and just now I'm actually realizing how many of them, if not potentially all of them, the way you go about doing the puzzle is actually very thematically linked to the major arcana card that is triggering that puzzle. Like there's there's so many layers of thought that has gone into it. And it played really well with the three of us. Like when we had your sister playing with us, most of the time it was just the two of us. I think if you were to start adding more people, it would get tricky because obviously you're all trying to sort of see the same small card, tarot-sized cards. But at 2 and 3, it was fine.
Yeah, and
solo it would be fine as well.
And the puzzles are just activating different parts of our brains because sometimes it was really obvious to Maggie and not my sister and I. Sometimes it was really obvious to me, and so it felt like all of us were contributing something to each of these puzzles. So
I realized how I was not the most valuable player. A lot of the time, I was like, I am so bad at so many of these puzzles. And Amy, and I'm very comfortable with going, let's just get a hint. And Amy's like, no. I want to try and crack this by myself. So that's probably why with some of those puzzles we spent, even longer. Because it's like, no, we're gonna have to figure it out.
Yeah, but I like it. And you could, if you wanted to, you could put away the puzzle and go to a different puzzle if you want to, and like be ruminating on how to crack that puzzle.
In the middle of the night, you wake up and you go, I've got it. I know what I need to do with the cards.
Yeah, because another thing and something you really liked about this game is there's no time pressure.
Yes, I really enjoy that because, it's like that whole. Yes, it adds tension when you're kind of playing an escape room in a box, but in here, the puzzle itself is like a lot of them are challenging enough that it's being able to just spend the time to think it through is actually really satisfying.
Super satisfying. Yeah. It became that game that was just, sitting on, in our line of sight, and every now and then we'd have a lazy afternoon where we're like, let's have a cup of tea and sit down and work out a few more puzzles. And over the course of what was definitely over 5 hours of puzzling, so it took us a little while because we were doing it in like batches of puzzles. And we'd do like 3 or 4 and then we'd be like, that's enough now. Like for today, my brain is in overdrive and then we'd come back to it. And it was just perfect for that. I absolutely adored it.
And it's so portable as well. Like it's just it doesn't take up a whole heap of room. And so it's very easy at the end of the day to just go, do you want to maybe do a couple of puzzles?
Yeah, and we did take it with us to other people's houses a couple of times.
It's really just the rule book, essentially. That's the one that has all the story and all the sort of bits and pieces, and your deck.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And the last thing I want to comment on is the hint system itself. So you can work out if you have cracked the puzzle using the book that it comes with. So you don't need to have any electronics, but they do have a QR code that you can scan to use to not only work out if you've cracked the puzzle, but also as the hint system. And the hint system is really excellent because it gives you, just like if you're in an escape room and they start with like a very loose hint and then it gets more and more specific. It's really great if you just want to steer in the right direction. And then I'm like, no, that's enough. We can work it out from here. No, do not turn to hint 2. So,
and it's very clear when it's about to give you the answer. It kind of goes, spoiler ahead. This is about to, so to go, oh, okay, I won't push it anymore. I'm just going to try and figure it out from here.
Yeah. So Light in the Mist, just such an incredible experience that we wanted to share with you all. Meg and I just had so much fun with this.
I was really surprised by it. I was intrigued by it because I knew that I would like the artwork and I was kind of into tarot at the moment, but I was actually really sort of taken by how much I was enjoying just sort of sitting down, even though the puzzles were really, like, not all of them. Some of the puzzles are quite quick and sort of you can figure them out. But some of the ones were, you know, really tough, but I was still really enjoying myself.
And even when we're cooperating together, we can do it when it comes to puzzles.
Yes.
So there you go.
Yeah.
I would give this a 8 out of 10. I just really thought it was a spectacular example of this genre. I think it's a great step up if you've been playing, you know, those little escape room style games, because the puzzles are harder. It's probably feels a bit more adult, a bit more sophisticated.
Yeah.
And then it's just gorgeous as well.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree. I'm going to give it an 8 as well, because it has just that perfect blend of narrative, but it's not just sort of hitting you over the head with just like reading them forever and ever. And then the puzzles and every card and every time you're working through those cards, it's just such an aesthetic and visual delight that is just, beautiful experience.
We hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.